So Hall effect or magnetic keyboard switches have become essential for my CS2 gaming. Now, the fundamental thing with magnetic switches is that you are reducing the latency when it comes to physically pressing a key. And that is the most important thing when it comes to quick reaction times. For example, let's say you're on a 1v1 duel and your enemy has a regular keyboard where the actuation point is 2 to 3 millimeters. It takes that much time, that physical distance to press it. Whereas with this, you can obviously customize that actuation point to 0.3 millimeters or even less. And we're going to talk about more advanced features about, like rapid trigger and all that stuff that really help with counter strafing. But this has really made a difference in my CS2 gaming. And I think that anyone who is somewhat, competitive or really serious with online first person shooters or any type of online game that requires kind of like a WASD setup, this is definitely worth it. Now, one of the major complaints with a lot of these Hall effect magnetic keyboards is that they're extremely expensive. I mean, if you look at the Wooting keyboard, it is very, very expensive. Now, finally, there are more affordable Hall effect keyboards like this one by Melgeek. This is called their MADE68, and this one has the Hornet magnetic switch by Kailh. So let's go into the review of this. I'm going to give you a full physical tour of the keyboard, then we're going to go into the software, which is a very important part, and then I'm going to share my review near the end of this video. So let's get right into it. All right, so first things first, right away, you're going to see that this keyboard looks very, very nice. And one of the most standout features is this kind of light bar. And you can change the colors and whatnot. I'm going to show you that in the software section, but you can have like a little gradient. You can make it pulsate a little bit, as you can see here. So I just think it looks fantastic. It's a really cool, unique type of LED lighting. Typically, you just get LED lighting on the actual keys, but this one looks pretty dang cool. Now, one of my biggest pet peeves with the Wooting 68 HE, which is another very famous Hall effect keyboard, which is very expensive, is that it had a incline about 6 degrees. And I noticed that the incline here is not as bad. It's more of a neutral profile. And in terms of ergonomics, having a flat profile or as neutral as possible is so important to keep your wrist in a more neutral position. Some keyboards have a kickstand, which causes a positive tilt, and that will cause your wrist to kind of bend like this. I'm obviously exaggerating, and that is really bad for your health and your ergonomics. So I'm really glad that they have more of a neutral profile. As you can see, there's no kickstand over here or anything like that, and that's totally fine. I think this is a very comfortable keyboard. So one of the important things when it comes to gaming a lot, especially first-person shooters, is that you're going to be constantly having your hands on the WASD cluster. And I just find that pressing these keys, they just feel extremely comfortable. Something about the magnetic switches, they just have less friction than normal switches. They're the more budget-friendly Hornet green switches. So these are the Hornet magnetic switch. You can see that it's a lot cheaper than the magnetic switch. They're 141. You can see that it's a lot cheaper than the magnetic jade switch, which I don't know if you really need that. Or you can just buy 5 pieces with the jade switch, so it's only $3 more, and then you can swap out these keys. So that's another great thing about this keyboard, is that it's hot swappable, and then you can remove the switches, you can replace them, you can have more higher quality switches, or maybe change the feel. But these switches, even though they're more like budget friendly, they are very, very good. I just find that they're really smooth, a lot smoother than any type of really high quality Gateron switch that is mechanical in nature, because just due to the magnetic nature of it. And speaking of comfort, I really, really like the keycaps. So a positive trait of this keyboard over my Wooting 68 HE is that this has a slightly bigger keyboard layout. So you can see here, it says MADE68. Well, I bet the 68 means that there are 68 keys here. I'm not going to count it. And one of the things I really like about this is having the arrow clusters at this bottom corner over here. It just feels so nice to be able to have dedicated keys for key rows, home, delete, page up, page down. And you can rebind some other keys. The software is fantastic for rebinding other keys in case maybe, for example, you like insert instead of home, whatever. You can have that there. And then you have your function key over here, so you can switch to a different layer. You can program other keys to different layers. It's just a great layout. I think it's perfect in terms of, not sacrificing too much of a small layout, but still having the essential keys on the far right over here. So this is their software. This is called the Melgeek Hive software, and they support Windows, Mac, and Linux. So don't worry, all the major operating systems are supported. Now, unfortunately, unlike some other keyboards like the Wooting, it doesn't have a web-based software. And I would love to have that. I think it's really great to not have to install any software. But what I really like about this software, for example, is that it doesn't need to be running in the background. Once you programmed your keyboard, you can pretty much delete the software or not use it ever again, because it's not bloated or anything like that, unlike the Steel series or the Razer keyboards that require you to have certain functionality to work with the actual software running in the background, eating system resources. This is just really simple, and you just have it running. All right, so let's do a quick tour. Now you can switch between 5 different profiles, and of course you can save your profile. So you have a default, typing, rapid profile, esports profile. Now the basic thing you probably want to start doing is assigning special keys. So you can see over here, I've assigned the home button over here to this special key called D2. And you can do all sorts of other things. For example, my caps lock, I would like to bind it to escape, for example. So I can have that done here. However, these 2 keys, I've have them bind it to special keys or super keys. So let's go to super keys. Now we have this thing called DKS. It's a type of super key that allows you to have multiple functions with one key press up or down. And we're going to go into that a little bit later. One of the things that you should consider is the caps lock key is a really big key on the left side of your keyboard over here. And it's very underutilized. I think caps lock is a terrible legacy way of putting a key there. It's a dumb functionality. You can bind it to something else, maybe under a function layer, because how often are you using caps lock? So I like to bind it to escape. And if you can hold it, you can do something else too. So this is what they call, you can go over here and do mod tap, and then you can see hold and then tap. So in my case, I already have one. I'm going to go here and edit. You can see with that when I hold a key, it's enter, and when I tap it, it's escape. And I love that because then now I can bind my escape to tilde, and this allows me to access my console in CS2, Counter-Strike 2. You can change the hold duration. 200 milliseconds is very industry standard when it comes to these types of things. Now there's one caveat with this mod tab, and it's unlike the Wooting software, is that you can't bind one of these keys to a function. And what I would love for it to be able to do, and I hope in the software update, I'm going to let them know as feedback, is that I want to be able to hold the caps lock key and then trigger my layer. So if I go back to the main place over here, you can see that we have function 1, which is the default layer. That's just kind of the default right here. And then function 2, which is triggered by this key over here, or the one over here I'm physically pointing at. And then you can go here, you can change the volume up, down. And then there's function 3 and function 4. I would have loved the ability to hold my caps lock key and then switch to another layer and then press something. So because usually what happens is I'll be typing and then I'll hold the caps lock key and then I want to hit another key at the same time, which would be at a different layer. So that's one little downside that they don't support that. But everything else is really good. I mean, you have extra keys to compensate for that. All these keys on the right side. So you're going to be totally fine. You can go to the function key. You can assign any other key. For example, I could assign the caps lock key to a function layer. So if I go back to A right now, it's A0 for my super key. So you can see these are all the super keys, which are defined here. This is very similar software to Vial or VIA, if you're familiar with QMK mechanical keyboards. Yeah, I could just simply, I don't know, let's take the escape, take it, and then you just plop it right there, and now it's escape. But I really like my super escape, which is better. It's a 2-in-1 functionality, so I go back. A0 is the one I want. And in terms of all the other type of keys that you can assign, you have your basic, full keyboard layout, function rows, blah, 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 all that stuff. Then you have the extended, so you have your volume, things like going to my computer, home page, browser back, browser forward, refresh, all this stuff, voice on Mac OS. You have all the special keys that you can send to your operating system that are proprietary to the operating system. One of my favorite ones is hitting function, and then this key over here, which I don't frequently press, this combination, just to shut off my computer. I love that functionality because, after a long day of work, I just want to turn off my computer and not have to click anything. So that's definitely a pro tip. So we have brightness, display the brightness. You control the OS. You have mouse clicks, which is kind of amazing. You can move the mouse around. That's really cool. I feel like it has inklings of QMK in here. You can control the lighting on this keyboard. And then here you can assign different layers. So like function layer 3, function layer 4. You can just plop it on. So let's say, for example, maybe I do want the escape to be a function layer. I can just do that. And then you can change the layout. It can automatically assign it to Dvorak, Colmac, Workman, and ABC. I'm not that advanced. I'll just use the basic QWERTY. Now moving on to lighting. Lighting is really easy. Now MO means it's off. So right now it's completely off. And then if I switch to M1, I'm going to put it to max brightness. So I'm going to toggle between all the different effects. You can change the brightness, move it up and down like that. Different color layouts over here, predefined. You can do per key. So you can just like WASD. I want it to be purple, for example. I love these kind of group ways of selecting all the keys. So let's say I want to do a reverse. I want to select all the keys but WASD. I hit reverse right over there. And I can assign all the other keys. I'd say blue, something like that. So there you go. You have different keys. Now the box light is obviously another cool feature. Right now I have it breathing. You can have it static. You can change the brightness of it, change all the different colors. So this is one of the coolest features. I really do like it. Now I do want to admit that the brightness of the LED for some reason isn't as bright as some of the other keyboards I've owned. That's a little bit unfortunate, but overall I think that the box light is really cool. And I'm not a big fan of RGB at the end of the day. I don't really find it that useful, but if you're really into aesthetics, it's still there. All right, so super keys is really neat feature. I want to show you this one over here. This is called DKS. So on the way down at the 0.5 millimeter mark, I'm going to press a 1. And then when I get to the 3.6 millimeter mark, which is pretty much the bottom out, this is how far the switches go, 3.6 millimeters, which is pretty industry standard. I mean, it goes down to 4 millimeters on standard keyboards, so they're a little bit shorter to press. Anyways, I'll press a 2 when I hit the bottom, when I bottom out there. And then as I go up from 3.6, it's going to do a 3. And then I'm going to do, finally, when I go all the way back up, it's going to do a 4. So that's really cool. I'm going to press it down to 0.5, 2. I'm holding it there. I'm going to go all the way down. Now I'm at 2. And then I'm going to go back up, and I'm at 3. And I'm going to let go. Whoops, I had a mistake. So 1, 2, 3, let go, 4, like that. So this is a kind of a cool thing. Let's say you're controlling your character and there's like a run mode, a walk mode, and a sprint mode. You can control it so that when you press it lightly, you're kind of walking, and then you press it down, you're actually going fast. So this just makes it easier than having to hold a modifier. Typically, you have to hold a modifier key like shift to like slowly walk or something like that. So that's what the DKS does. All right, so let's move on to the creme de la creme of all the features, and that's the setting the actuation point and having rapid trigger. Now I'm going to try and explain this one more time. I know in the intro of this video I explained the benefits of it, but I just think I need to re-emphasize how much of an improvement this is in terms of the physical latency when it comes to making a smaller actuation point. So as usual, you can do things like select all the keys, you can reverse it, and you can unselect keys. So these are like bulk controls. So you don't necessarily have to like click on all the keys and then assign them, let's say, a base configuration, and then click on another set of keys, and then you can set those. It just makes it very easy. So what I would do is I would select all the keys, and then I would set my actuation point. So right now I'm going to set it to 2 because that's like pretty industry standard for regular keys. And then I'm going to unselect that and then hit WASD, which I've already done. And you can see that I've assigned it to 0.5 millimeters. Now, I think you should experiment with this. Obviously, you want to decrease it from 2 millimeters because what's the whole point of buying this? Typically, if you wanted faster switches, you would get like Cherry MX Silver switches, which are faster, but it's kind of BS because all it is setting the actuation point to like 1 millimeter, but you don't have a dynamic active trigger, which I'm going to talk about later in the rapid trigger. So 0.5 is pretty good for me in CSGO. I find it pretty good. I love the set bottom dead zone to kind of just the default. I really care for that stuff over there. Now, I definitely recommend enabling rapid trigger. I'm trying to quickly explain what it means. So in CS2, when you're counter strafing from side to side, you basically want to stop your character as fast as possible by pressing the opposing key. So in my case, A and D are the opposing key. I go left with A and D with right. So I'm going to move, I'm going to press D, and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to hit my A, right? But the thing with rapid trigger is that the actuation point is dynamic. So they have this really cool real-time graph. So what you can do with rapid trigger is that I can go all the way down to, let's say that's about 0.5 millimeters right there, right? I'm going to get all the way down to 3.5. And if I let go, if I let go 0.5 millimeters, which I've set it to, you can see that I've set it to 0.5 millimeters. That means I've let go of the key. So if I do that again, so typically on a normal keyboard, I would have to go all the way back up to that 0.5 actuation point. That's a far distance. I have to go from 3.5 all the way back to 0.5 to reset that key. But with rapid trigger, that thing is dynamic. It's based on the relative distance of where you're moving from. So you can be anywhere within that range of 0 to 3.5. And as long as you set it to whatever you want, you're going to reset the key and then you can press the other key. So this makes the going from A to D really fast. Now, with rapid trigger, you have more nuanced settings. You can go to advanced settings. You can do continuous rapid trigger. These are all off by default. I just like to keep it really simple for myself. You can also separate the sensitivity of the upstroke and downstroke. This is very common in a lot of Hall effect keyboards. I just keep it 0.5, just kind of the same as my actuation point so that I get that really responsive AD strafing or a WS if I want to stop my character really fast. Yeah, in my case, all the keys are set to 2. I don't really care. Maybe I can set my Windows key all the way to 3.6 because I don't want to accidentally tap it. Same with the my escape key. I'm going to set that to 3.6. In fact, maybe everything else should be really high up so I don't hit accidental keys that might interrupt my game. Yeah, actually, the tilde key, I do mess up a lot and I hit it and sometimes a little bit. So it's nice to have that less responsive key. All right, so We've talked about the performance. Now we go to switch. So as you can see, all the switches are green, meaning that it's at the Kailh Green Hornet switch. You can upgrade and get the Gateron magnetic white switch, which I actually do have. So you can swap out your WSD if you want a different feeling. But honestly, these key switches are pretty damn good for what they are. Or you get the ultra premium Gateron and magnetic jade switch. It's supposed to sound like a jade monkey. It does have auto calibration on, which is really neat, but never had to use that. And then this testing thing is really cool. You can see the sensitivity of it. It's just fantastic. It's just really cool. Settings, I did update this with the firmware, and that's pretty much it. If you want to export your profile, you can hit export or import, and you can rename the profile too. Another thing I really like about the software is that as soon as you assign a key or do anything within the software, it automatically saves. You don't have to constantly hit Control S or whatever. So I really like that feature. It's just automatically there, meaning that you can go into CS2 or whatever game you have and just constantly like swap back and forth and just get that feeling. So overall, I have to say this is a fantastic budget version. It's still expensive, but it's still a budget version compared to some of the competitors out there. And what you're really paying for is that awesome keyboard layout, really compacted, small. And I love the fact that the key switches, the feeling of the keyboard, the neutral profile, the keycaps just feel really, really good for long competitive CS2 gaming. It's just such a comfortable keyboard. It performs very, very well because obviously it's using Hall effect magnetic switches, which make a huge difference when you're playing these games. So I definitely recommend checking it out. I'll leave a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.